Hey, doing an oil change today on Ford F-150 Diesel. This is kind of a newer vehicle, so this is sort of an unknown because there's not a lot of information out on how to do it, so I'm going to take you through step by step. First thing is you're going to need a 530 weight synthetic diesel oil. The engine that goes in these is the same engine that goes in a lot of turbo diesel cars in Europe. Castor Oil does make an oil for this. That's hard to track down. For me, it was much easier to get a hold of the Motorcraft, and I'd rather just put the Motorcraft oil in because you know that it's meant to work with the truck. And then you need a filter. It's a cartridge filter that comes with a O-ring that you're going to want to replace when you get the cartridge filter off. I went with the Motorcraft one there. It's the FL 2081. If you want to go get it from your Ford dealer or online. So then some tools and, you know, just some nice to haves here. One, this is a mechanic's guard. You can put it over the fender. I definitely don't want to scratch up this nice new truck. And then I also, because it's hard to get at the cartridge filter, I have this step stool to stand on. You can buy them at Harbor Freight. They're fairly inexpensive. And then you're going to need a socket to get the cartridge filter off. I used 1 1/4 inch. I'm sure it's metric, but the 1 1/4 inch fit just fine. You're going to need to get the O-ring off the filter cartridge. You're going to need a pick, or it's nice to have, especially when your hands are covered in oil, to get the splash guard or brush guard off the bottom of the truck. You're going to need an 11 mil socket, and you're going to need a 8 mil socket. And then I didn't drive it up on ramps because I didn't have any clearance problems, but you may want to get a set of ramps. Those ramps give you a little extra clearance. I didn't want to do it because it's hard enough to reach that cartridge filter, in my opinion, when you get up there. So having it higher off the ground, if I could get it the other way. And then kind of goes without saying, you need a pan to drain the oil into. This is going to dump out between 6 and 7 quarts. So you're going to want to make sure you have a sizable oil pan underneath there. And then I also have a sheet that I put underneath, so if anything spills outside the pan, I don't have a whole bunch of oil on my garage floor. So the first step is to get underneath this truck and get the splash guard off the bottom so we can get access to the drain plug. And so I'll walk you through how I did that. So I'm underneath the vehicle. There's this splash guard here, and you can see that it's bolted on with these fasteners. If I can find it, sorry, a little tight. And so I'm gonna go ahead and get, looks like there's 6 of them, so I'm gonna get them unbolted and drop this splash guard, and then that'll give us access to the drain plug. So I got the splash guard removed. Sorry, that's a tough one to do holding the camera, so I didn't even try like I normally would. So it turns out there's only 5 bolts. So on the passenger side, there's this flange bolt that comes off, and then the rest of these are just basically just your typical bolt that goes underneath, and there's one in each corner. So you get that off, and then that gives you access to the oil drain plug, and I'll show you how that goes when I drain the oil out. I'm going to go up top and next show you how to pull off the stuff on the top of the engine. Nothing compared to your typical gas car. There's a lot of extra things here with the diesel version of this. So take you through the top side and what we pull off there. All right, so this is the top side of the engine. So the next thing that has to come off is this plastic cover, which I think I've already just jarred loose trying to show you. You can see someone who worked on this car before me obviously tore some of this insulation. So this has to come off the top. I'm gonna go on the other side because I don't want to break that unnecessarily. And so this is gonna pop off. Yep, look straight up. Go back to the other side. Something I'm not. Okay, so there you go. So now that I've got, so here's the cover. So go ahead and set this off to the side, but that's the cover. And then this is going to give us access to what I hope is the oil filter, and there it is. So right here, get a light on that for you. So right there, that's a cap for the cartridge oil filter that comes with this. And obviously there's our oil fill, and there's our there's our dipstick for checking the oil. So the next thing to do, now that I got everything exposed and know where it is I'm going to go ahead and drain the oil out of the bottom, and I'll show you how that goes. One note, always a good idea to check the oil level before you drain it, just in case, because that'll indicate if you have an oil leak or not. This is a pretty new truck, so I'd be surprised if it did, and a diesel one on top of that, but it's always good to check. And then as a note, you know, with diesel engines, there's a fair bit of blow by, so the oil will be black. Doesn't necessarily indicate that the oil went bad unless the mileage indicates that. And on this truck, it's got a oil life gauge, if you will, and if you follow that and follow Ford's recommendations, you'll be just fine. Okay, so I'm under the truck. I've got my splash guard off, and then you can see here, so this is the transmission, and then working my way forward, this right here is the drain plug, that's the oil pan, and this is basically the engine. So that's a 15 mil, so you're going to want to go ahead and get that off. I suspect I'll need two hands, so but we'll give it a shot. Yeah, I can't do it with one hand, so I'm going to put down the camera and then I'll get this bolt loose. Okay, so I got that loose. Also, make sure this holds about 7 quarts, so it's more than your typical car, so you want to just make sure that you got an oil pan that can handle that volume so you don't have an overflow and a giant mess. We'll go ahead and get this off. Also, just a word to the wise, I'm wearing the heavy-duty mechanics gloves because this oil will be hot, and you're going to want a little protection on your hands. Okay, so we'll just let that drain. Okay, so now the next step is we've got to get the oil filter out. So I'm going to stick a little bit of paper towel, shop towel in here. Since this is on the top of the engine, I suspect that it's going to not really, and it's the engine stopped. We drained the oil out of the bottom, so the oil is seeped out of the filter cartridge. But nonetheless, let's put a little paper towel there. So worst case scenario, if oil leaks out, it doesn't make a mess of the engine. All right. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a socket and I'm going to put it on top of there and twist this off. Okay, so I'm going to get the filter off. So I've got the 1.25" socket that fits perfectly on there. So I'm going to go ahead and use that to get this cartridge off. Okay, here we go. I'm going to use both hands because I don't want to damage anything here. Let me get it loose. Okay, so got it loose. It's on there tight. There's a gasket in there. That's totally normal. So, but obviously the last thing I want to do is just a little plastic housing here. and I'm not terribly interested in breaking it. So, okay, let's pull it out and see what we got. Okay, and here we go. Here's so a couple aspects of this that we want to take note of. So it's a cartridge filter, which you probably already gathered. So we'll pull that filter out here in a second when I have an oil pan available. The second thing is it's got a gasket along here, and that's what we got to be real careful with. The kit comes with a replacement one, so we will put a new one on, because obviously, just like a typical oil filter, this is the part you're worried about, because if anything bad happens to it, then you find yourself in a situation where you're leaking oil, and that puts you on the side of the road. Okay, so I still got the tray underneath the truck, so I'm just going to do this on a paper towel. So here's my new oil filter. So I went with the Motorcraft one, so this is the correct one for that truck. And then with it comes that replacement gasket, and what we'll want to do is dab a little bit of oil on this to make sure that, you know, it spins on just fine. So step number one, obviously compared to oil filters, it looks like that's a perfect fit. You'd hope so, being the Motorcraft one going back in a Ford truck. And then this guy just needs to pull out. Well, all right, I might need both my hands, so give me a second. So the filter presented trouble, so I took my channel locks, I bit on it, and I pulled it out. It will come out. It's in there really tight. It kind of breaks one of my rules, because I always like to, just in the worst case scenario, for some reason, I don't know, I damaged the filter putting it in or whatnot. If worst case scenario, it'd still be drivable by not damaging the oil part, because you'd obviously want to change the filter every time you change the oil. But in a bad situation, I would be, you know, more than happy to put the old filter in just to drive to the auto parts store to get another filter. But anyway, so channel lock pliers, pull it out, it comes out, and you've got your filter out. One other thing you can do is you can kind of inspect your filter here, and you can see if there's any, you know, metal filings in there. This is not the first oil change for this truck, and it's the new truck, so I wouldn't really expect much there. So now I've got my new filter here, and what we're going to want to do is push this guy in, and you can see I got it in because it's flush with the top, or you can see I got it in now because it's flush with the top. And do is get this O-ring off, and I'm going to get a gasket pick to do that. Okay, so just get your gasket pick. Get your gasket pick here. Just gently, because you don't want to ding up the plastic. Get this and peel it off. Just kind of work your way around. Okay. Not too elegant doing it with one hand, but there's that. And then what we're going to want to do is I'm going to take I need to get some oil on this, because you definitely want this lubricated. So I'm going to go ahead and get one of my bottles of oil here. Okay. I'm just going to get a little bit of oil on my finger here, and I'm just going to work it around this gasket. Doesn't take much. You just need a little lubrication so when it gets back on the truck. Okay, so we'll go ahead and slide that back on like so. Kind of try not to twist this thing if you can. I'm not doing a good job, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the camera and use two hands. Okay, so I got the gasket back on, so now the next step is to go ahead and put this on the truck. So let's do that. If you put the paper towel in there like I did, definitely Want to get those out of the way at this point, and then we're just going to thread this guy back on, and it should just spin on like so. And then I'm going to hit the point where the gasket starts to bite, and so at that point I'm going to need my wrench. So I got that here. So we want to I'm just going slow, making sure I'll know when it finally catches. Right now I'm feeling the resistance of the gasket. And obviously getting this on tight is super critical. And just take your time. No point. Okay, now it just got firm. So you don't need to put much more on this. Like, that's about all the torque I'm going to do. And the oil filter's in, and we're on to the next part, which is put the drain plug back in, and then we'll fill this with oil. Okay, so we're under the truck, so we just need to get this drain plug back in. Let's go ahead and do that. Alright, let's get the wrench on this. Okay, and then as I say with if you watch any other videos, you do not need to put this on any more than reasonably hand tight, and like that's all I need to put on this. Any more, all you do is just strip you know, oil pans and drain plugs. So just, you know, enough, just a little bit of torque, and then you're done. That won't come out, and you'll do yourself a favor and not damage, you know, and have to replace an oil pan, because that's never a good thing. Okay, so now let's go ahead and fill this baby with some oil. Okay, so what we're gonna do is, it's between 6 and 7 quarts, so I'm just gonna go ahead and pour in 6 quarts, measure it out, and then add from there. So first things first, I've got my first quart, so let's pour that in. Okay, 6 more to go. I'm not going to bore you with that, so we'll get to the end. Okay, so I poured 6 quarts in. I checked the level, and it's showing full. Now, I suspect after the cartridge oil filter fills up with some oil that'll drop down, but I'm right at the top, so I'm going to go ahead and close this up, and I'm going to go ahead and run it for a minute, and then I'll recheck the level and also check for any oil leaks. Okay, so I ran the truck for a minute, and then I rechecked the level. Needed to be added. I poured in approximately an extra half a quart, so 6.5 quarts right there. And so yeah, at this point now, what you always want to do with anything is now check for any oil leaks. So like our filter in here, is there any oil coming out? And the answer to that is no, it's dry, so that part's good. So then let's get underneath the truck and see if we can find any oil leaking anywhere. Okay, everything looks good here. Kind of just looking around up top, see if anything would be dripping down. Being that it was dry up there, I think we're good. And so at this point now, I'll go ahead and put back on the splash guard and the engine cover, and then I'll show you how to reset the oil life. Let's get the cover back on here so you can see that there are these two kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, but these two kind of extensions off there, and then there's two hooks off right there, those metal hooks. So we're going to want to basically get those underneath. I guess I call these like rods. All right, so now let's go ahead and see if we can do this. Okay, it's on. And then let's just go ahead and see if we can press this on. Well, that side went on perfect. Go over here. Yep, it's on. Okay, so we're good there. So now get underneath and get that guard back on. So sorry, I couldn't capture putting the guard back on. It took both hands, but here it is underneath the truck. Once again, it's 5 bolts. Pretty basic, except for the part where you really need 2 hands. So what I did is I threaded this one on, and then I went to the other end and bolted that one on, so I had enough of it in the air, and then I went and did one of the front bolts, then kind of just worked my way to the rest of the other bolts. So anyway, that's the strategy. And so next I'll show you how to reset the oil life. So just a reminder, you want to properly recycle your oil. So I'm going to dump this into 2 containers because it's a little close to 7 quarts. You can take this back or to your local auto parts store and they can properly recycle it for you. So please make sure to do that. Okay, so the last thing you want to do is reset your oil life here. So we'll go ahead and go over to the settings. So just using this arrow key, arrow all the way over to the settings, and then we just need to go into the advanced settings, I believe, vehicle. Okay, and then there's oil life reset, so press OK. So you can see I was about 25% oil life left, so you just press the OK button and hold it, and that will go ahead and reset the oil life. So we're back up to 100%. Thank you for watching my video. If you like my content, please subscribe, like, and comment below.